This is question number 3 on geometry homework number 14. The question says, what is the area of the trapezoid shown below? When I look at this shape, I see a rectangle and a triangle. So I know I need two area formulas. So I'm going to prepare my area formula for a rectangle is going to be A equals L times W, length times width. And then for my triangle, it's going to be A equals 0.5 base times height. So let's go ahead and plug in some numbers. If I look at just the rectangle, I have 12 as the length. My width, I don't know. We don't know what the width is. So let's at least plug in the 12 so that we have it there. And then I'm going to leave that blank for whenever I can find the width. For area of the triangle, we're looking at this. So I know that my base is 8. My height is going to be going to the top of the triangle, which is here, dropping a line straight down. Again, that's the side that we don't know. So we can fill in the base. Base is going to be 8. So I'll say A equals 0.5, 8 for the base. But the height I'm going to leave blank for right now because we don't know that. So how can we figure this out? Well, when we look at this triangle, we see a right triangle and we see two sides labeled. If this was a 30, 60, 90 triangle or a 45, 45, 90 triangle, we could use the formulas that we have, but we don't know that. These angles aren't labeled, so we don't know that for sure. Instead, what we can do is we can use the Pythagorean theorem to do a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So I'm going to leave some space up here so I can finish that later once I get the numbers. And instead, I'm going to come down and say a squared plus b squared equals c squared. My a squared, well, let's start with c squared. C squared is going to be our hypotenuse. So I'm going to draw a line from my right angle, and I know my hypotenuse is 10, so I'm going to say 10 squared right here. A squared and b squared, it doesn't matter where you plug them in. I'm going to use a squared as 8, and then b squared will just be this unknown value that we have. So 8 squared plus b squared. Then I'll expand. 8 squared is going to be 8 times 8 plus b squared. 10 squared is going to be 10 times 10. 8 times 8 is going to be 64 plus b squared. 10 times 10 is 100. And now we have an integer, a variable, and an integer. So I need to combine my two integers. I can't move the 100 because it's all by itself, but I can move the 64. Right now it's a positive 64, so to move it I need to do minus 64 on both sides. And that cancels out. I'm left with b squared equals 100 minus 64. If we borrow, we have 9, and then 10 we can borrow from. And then 10 minus 4 would be 6. 9 minus 6 would be 3. And, oops, that should have been a 0, not a 9. 0 minus nothing is 0. So we're left with b squared is 36. I'm going to take the square root of both sides. The square and the square root cancel out, and I'm left with just b on this side, and the square root of 36 would be 6. So if we think about what we just figured out, we had plugged in our sides of our triangle here. We didn't know b. That was this side right here. So b is now 6. I can plug in 6 here. And now if we come back to our formulas, let's see if we have the width now. We said the length of the triangle was 12. The width we now have, it's 6, so we can plug in 6 here. For the triangle, we said we didn't have the height. We had the base as 8. When we came to the top of the triangle and dropped a line down, we didn't know that before, but now we know it. It's 6, so we can plug in 6 here. So now we can just calculate this, and we'll have our answer. 12 times 6 is going to be 72. We don't have any units, so I'm just going to say units squared. That's for my rectangle. Then for my triangle, I did, well, let's do our whole numbers first. 8 times 6 is going to be 48. Carry down everything else. And 0.5 times 48, or half of 48, is going to be 24. Again, we're going to say units squared. So the last step, what you're going to do in this area right here, is add your area of a rectangle plus your area of a triangle, and that will give you the area of the trapezoid. So remember, your answer should be units squared.